Okay, so continuing on with the small fixed blade Olympics here. Just a refresher, we have the Boker Nesmi, we have the SE Izula, we have the Tops Mini Scandi, the White River Knives M1 Backpacker, and the Benchmade Altitude. So I had meant to do carryability for the second video. However, Colorado has had nonstop rain for basically 40 days, and so I haven't been able to get out on my mountain bike to actually kind of really test these things out. But I did go camping up in Wyoming, where it's a little bit less rainy. Had a chance to do hours and hours of carving on wood. In fact, I'll go ahead and show two quite large sticks got whittled down to two chopsticks. I tend to do chopsticks just because they're kind of functional at camp as a utensil to grab stuff. So I'll be talking about that specifically, but in terms of cut tests, we're going to jump right to the kind of, I won't say cut tests, but just cutting capabilities. Really, how's this thing going to handle with small wood? How's it going to handle with food? What is the blade geometry? What about these coatings? Do they impede the cutting? In some cases with wood, they absolutely did. Specifically, this powder coated one, I can tell you right now with the SE Zula, I just wish it didn't have that rough texture. Honestly. It actually just gets caught up on stuff. But to kind of simulate food, I'm going to go ahead and be just thin slicing cork, because I found that's a pretty good emulator. I'm not going to necessarily be cutting an apple on these. I don't have any apples in the house, otherwise I would have. And we're going to talk a little bit about the blade geometry, the blade shape as well. Like this one is a Nessmuck, this one is a Scandi, versus you have your kind of standard drop points in these other three. As well as kind of lastly, which one would I probably want in my hands for defense? In terms of you're going to be using that blade, there could be an animal, you never know. You saw the guy from Blade HQ that had a mountain lion basically tracking him down when he got too near the children, the babies. So that might be an actual scenario where I'd rather have this than nothing at all. So I'm going to go ahead and do some short interchange cuts here, so we don't have to just do it live and then swap it out. It'll just make it go a lot faster. And then at the very end of this, I'm going to go ahead and rank them in order from 1 to 5 in terms of just their actual cutting capabilities. So as for a blade that talking about defense against an animal, what you're going to want is something that's going to draw relatively quick, assured, and probably be basically in the Saturday Night Special grip. So for those that don't follow Bob DeMarco, the knife junkie, you should be. I kind of learned this from him, is if you think about this on your hip, scout carry, but at a 30-degree angle on your dominant side, what it allows you to do is basically very quickly grab any knife out, like extremely fast. So if you weren't going to lash it, I generally tend to lash mine to a backpack. But I'm not always wearing my backpack if I'm at camp. You know, I might be wearing a knife. So you know what? Either way, you're going to still want something regardless that's going to pull quickly this way and, you know, fairly assuredly, or this way fairly quickly. And also know that you're not going to basically be cutting yourself. So the QSP, that's the first one I demoed on. That's pretty good. I will go ahead and kind of fast forward through the others, or just talk very quickly through them in cut fashion. For the Izula, it has good retention, but it's not overly retained. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure that this is attached very firmly. You know, and then in the reverse position, you have a nice guard there for the Saturday Night Special position. Yeah, the Izula would be, I think, a very good one, and also has that nice sharp tip on that one versus... Actually, the Nessmuk... Oh, sorry, let me talk about that tip. The Nessmuk isn't terrible, but it's not maybe the most favorable because it's quite wide there. Behaving much more like a sheep's foot, which is what I'd probably rather not have necessary in the event of needing to use that. The Tops Mini Scandi, fairly good. I'm going to be modifying these, by the way, before the next video. I want 4 fingers on these things, especially if I was going to be using it for defense. So in the reverse Saturday Night Special grab, good. Pretty good. The retention on this one is pretty dang strong. So you're going to have to pull, you know, pull very hard and make sure that that thing is secured to however it's lashed or on your belt. But a good one on that. Okay, for the White River Firecraft, or not Firecraft, M1 backpacker, with obviously the Scout carrying this case. Yep, a very safe and secure, very quick grab. You're really not at any risk of cutting yourself. Yeah, this one's really good in terms of a pull. It's strange. I think I'm pushing it in too far. Yeah, the retention's good on this one. It's indeterminate sometimes. You can see a lot of the black filings here. It's obviously, you can take a look. Yeah, you see that shiny area? I'm shaving off little bits of the, oh yeah, you can see that of the Kydex nubbin. So maybe that'll be a long-term concern, possibly in an upside down position, but maybe not. You know, you really got to use a knife for a long time. I'm kind of rambling on this one because it is the only one that's not the same every single time, so I think that is going to be a small strike against it, but it obviously has a very good and pokey tip for that defense option. As for the Benchmade, this handle would definitely be the worst. It's so thin. Again, I did want to kind of do this demo, the quick draw, before I go ahead and do the mods on these handles. Like I said, it's almost a little bit unfair. Yes, I've already given the Izula a little mod, but that's only a $12 mod. Of course, some of these others are going to be less just because they're paracord. So never mind on that. And actually, what I really would say is I wouldn't even consider this knife really without just being a 3-finger. So sorry as I go back and forth, but this one, perfect retention, great positioning in terms of where you're left, you know, in the standard, you know, and then from this position as well. So this one, once I get some paracord on it, will be really good. Out of the gate, it's maybe not the best, but I really like this one. Good length to it. Like I said, you know, it's got a decent enough of a guard that you wouldn't slide forward. So yeah, the Benchmade does well. And kind of the last case scenario, it would really be probably skinning game and or, you know, processing game, small game. The Nessmuk is going to be fantastic in terms of this upward pinch position. It would be really cool if they actually did have jimping up there. But in terms of the blade shape, certainly like this, it's got the huge belly. This one would be really, really good. The, you know, I'll just go ahead and line them up. The Izula, I did actually on the front side montage, actually trim down, I forgot, was that tri-tip or brisket? I don't remember, I think it was like tri-tip. But yeah, this one actually has beautiful belly. Again, maybe some upward jimping, kind of like the Benchmade has, would be really good. But this one for processing game, the sizing of it was really, really good. You know, my game from the grocery store. The Scandi's going to be pretty awful at processing game. It's just, this is a woodcutter. Not that it can't be done. It's just, especially in this small configuration with this tiny handle, really, you would want a full-size one to get you a good grip. This would just be a little bit, I don't know, too pointy, and, you know, not enough belly, I think, on that one. The M1 backpacker would be really good, actually. Again, there's no front side jimping on that one. It is a little pokey tip, doesn't have as much belly quite as the SE Zula, but pretty good overall in terms of processing small game. And then I think probably the winner overall is just because of the size and the way that this one is done is the Benchmade Altitude. It has these pinch points. It has the front side jimping for that. You actually are pretty damn well locked in with just this tiny little blade. It is a little bit, maybe a little bit more belly would be better for actually processing the game, but then you might sacrifice some of the other cutting, that you would otherwise do with this one. So, yeah, in terms of, maybe processing small game and that sort of thing, hunting, I think for me, probably the Azula and the Benchmade are definitely the top. Then the M1, actually, probably the M1 is on par with the Boker Nesmi, and then I think the worst one was the Tops Mini Scandi. So overall, for the cutting, really, it's relatively easy to pick the bottom one. I'm going to go ahead and lowest to highest rankings for this. And yeah, the Tops Mini Scandi is a really, it's an interesting novelty. Overall, it's just you're missing some of the things that you'd be using this for. It's too small to be processing big wood. It's too pokey to really, not enough belly to be doing a lot of good with, let's say, the hunting. Cutting wasn't great. Again, you're just taking a look at that. Geometry's just not the best. It did carve into wood really nicely, but again, not having a full handle, and even with the lanyard on this, I don't know, you lose that effect. So that one is probably in the bottom of the cutting. I think the next one on the bottom of the cutting list, even though it was great for what I consider game processing, really, really good. There are a couple of things that hampered this. One was the powder coating on here. Not only does it come off on wood when I carved for an hour, pretty comfortable in hand, but that just kept dragging on anything that I was carving on. And for blood and guts, this one would be great because it would just slide right over it. But in terms of dry stuff, even the cork, it just grabs right on. And so overall, it just didn't do the best. And I think that was probably the next on the totem pole. Probably the next up would have been the Boker Nesmi. This one was a good all-around, very comfortable in hand. And that does contribute to it. Though this isn't about comfort yet, and ergos at this point in time. Just the cutting geometry was pretty good. It has nice belly. A good all-around, or I should say, kind of middle all-around, and that's where that one would come in third for this one. The M1 backpacker, very thin, very good overall, super sharp. This one just has a nice geometry, a fairly high flat ground on a thinner blade stock, makes for very good cutting, locks into the hand, was really good in any defensive positions and that sort of thing. So as far as cutting, a cutting tool, that one would be there, the M1 backpacker. But then the winner really for this, it's just no surprise. For cutting, you're talking about a very thin piece of S90V. We're not talking about hardwood processing. That's not the use case for these little small knives. Could you do a little small bit of wood with this one? I believe absolutely, and probably will before the end of this, just to see that it's not going to break. Benchmade tends to do a good job on their heat treats. I've utilized a Mini Freak before that had S90V. It did just fine, and it was easy enough to sharpen, but it held up a decent edge. So maybe it's not the Spyderco best perfect heat treat in the world, special and that sort of thing, but very good. And again, just taking a look at this geometry, everything that's thoughtful about it is about taking this outdoors and kind of using it. So as a cutting tool, not a big surprise that that's the winner. So these are the ordinals for this particular video. Stay tuned for part 3, which I'm hoping will be carryability.